The sky split apart, jagged streaks of violet lightning ripping across the heavens as a tear in reality groaned open. The portal exhaled a deep, mechanical hum, a sound foreign to this world of swords and sorcery. From its depths something emerged. It was not a dragon nor a god. It was worse. A titan of black metal, standing 50 feet tall, its armor a patchwork of war-torn plating and cruel, serrated edges. A skull-shaped helm crowned its monstrous frame, burning red optics surveying the landscape with cold precision. Its presence alone sent shockwaves through the ley lines of magic, twisting the natural balance of the realm. Behind it, the rip in space spat out more shapes, smaller but no less terrifying. Mecha soldiers, plated in crimson alloy, wielding weapons no wizard could comprehend. The machines did not chant spells, they did not draw swords. They simply activated, cold and efficient, scanning the land with the same lifeless hunger as their warlord. They had arrived. And conquest was about to begin. The kingdom of Eldoria, a world unready for war. Beneath the towering citadel of Eldoria, the capital of the greatest kingdom in the known world, King Alden paced his war room. His golden crown felt heavier today. Across the polished stone table, a trio of battle-hardened generals and the High Mage of the Arcane Order sat in tense silence. Reports had flooded in, each more impossible than the last. Metal giants. Weapons that spit fire hotter than dragon breath. Armor that magic could not pierce. "My liege, it is an invasion," General Kaler said, his voice grim. "They do not come for peace." The High Mage, an elder robed in sapphire robes, gritted his teeth. "Their technology is beyond us. No steel, no spell, no divine power has touched them. The elements themselves refuse to halt their march." King Alden exhaled sharply, turning to the grand stained glass window overlooking his city. His people. His knights, his sorcerers. Every defender who had fought against monsters, demons, and even gods. Yet now, for the first time in centuries, Eldoria faced an enemy they did not understand. The king turned back. "Then we will learn. We will fight." The Iron Warlord's first strike. From his throne aboard the Warbringer, the largest mecha fortress ever constructed, Lord Vorthas watched the land unfold before him. A world untouched by industry. A planet still clinging to primitive warfare, ruled by kings and emperors who had never seen a battlefield beyond flesh and bone. Pathetic. His metal fingers drummed against the armrest of his command throne. "Deploy the Obliterator." The command echoed through the warship, processed by machine intelligences and relayed to the frontline mechs. A massive siege walker, bristling with pulse cannons and gravity hammers, stomped forward. Behind it, a legion of mecha troopers advanced in perfect unison. The city of Rindal was the first target. A stronghold of knights, priests, and battle mages. A holy city they called it. Lord Vorthas sneered. Let's see how holy it remained under plasma fire. The siege of Rindal. The defenders of Rindal had seen war before. Orcish hordes, dark elven raiders, necromantic plagues. But they had never seen this. The first blast reduced the eastern wall to molten slag. Stone turned to liquid, banners disintegrated in an instant. Knights clad in enchanted plate armor were vaporized before they could raise their shields. Then the machines marched in. The Obliterator crushed what remained of the gate beneath its titanic foot, its cannons sweeping the streets with unrelenting destruction. Mecha soldiers advanced behind it, their weapons tearing through flesh and magic alike. A paladin, shield glowing with divine light, charged at one of the machines. His warhammer, blessed by the gods themselves, swung down in a mighty arc, only for the mech's energy shield to flicker, absorb the blow and return fire with a plasma lance. The holy warrior collapsed, his armor melted through his ribcage. On the castle walls, archmages unleashed storms of lightning and fire, but their magic dispersed harmlessly against the invaders' energy barriers. The city's defenders had always believed their spells to be unstoppable. They were wrong. Within the hour, Rindal was reduced to ruins. What remained of its people were shackled, their hands bound in cold steel, their expressions blank with shock. Lord Vorthas stepped forward, gazing down at the crumbling remains of the city. Another conquest complete. He turned to his second-in-command, a sleek, combat-honed machine intelligence that had once been human. Mark this as a lesson for the others. The machine nodded. And the survivors? Vorthas looked at the trembling remnants of Rindal's citizens. Women clutching their children. Elderly priests kneeling in silent prayer. Broken warriors staring at the dirt, weapons shattered. Send them to the forge camps. Those who resist, he let the sentence hang. The AI didn't need further instruction. the awakening of the ancient forces. But as the fires of Rindal burned, deep beneath the mountains of Eldoria, something stirred. For centuries, the world had been protected by its own ancient powers, forces older than kings, older than empires. Forces that slumbered beneath the surface, only rising in times of true calamity. And now, the land had deemed the invaders worthy of waking them. In the heart of the mountain, a colossal pair of eyes flickered open. Molten gold ran through the veins of the rock. The air itself trembled. The war was far from over. Beneath the ruined city of Rindal, the very bones of the earth trembled. Something ancient, something forgotten, had begun to stir. The mountain groaned, its deep veins pulsing with molten gold, and within the slumbering caverns of Eldoria's forgotten gods, titanic eyes flickered open. For centuries the land had endured wars, calamities, even divine conflicts, but never had it seen a threat like this. Never had its rulers, its priests, its warriors been so utterly outmatched. The invaders did not wield magic. They did not obey the laws of mana or physics as the world understood them. They were machines, soulless, merciless, unstoppable. The world itself rebelled against them. And now the gods had taken notice. The Warbringer's reckoning. High above the ruined battlefield, Lord Vortha stood on the command bridge of the Warbringer, his mechanical fingers drumming against the cold alloy of his throne. The invasion had gone flawlessly. Rindal had fallen in mere hours. The resistance had been pitiful. So why did he feel uneasy? He turned toward his tactical AI, an advanced machine intelligence housed in the floating drone known as Calculin 7. Any anomalies? The AI's digital eyes flickered, processing the raw data pouring in from the planetary scans. Unusual seismic activity detected, Commander. Local tectonic shifts do not align with expected planetary models. Vorthas narrowed his eyes. Meaning? Unknown. However, energy signatures resembling high-level thaumaturgic emissions have been detected in the mountain range northwest of our position. Vorthas scoffed. Magic. Every world had its myths, its so-called gods, its grand old powers. None had ever stopped him before. He turned back to the holomap. The kingdom of Eldoria was next. The capital city, a sprawling fortress surrounded by high walls and towering spires, was the last true stronghold on this continent. Deploy the forward battalions, he commanded. Crush them before they can mount a defense. Calculin 7 hesitated. Commander, I advise caution. The energy readings. Vorthas waved a dismissive hand. I do not fear superstition. The Warbringer's engines roared to life, and the invasion force marched toward its next conquest. They would regret it. The gods awaken. In the deepest chamber of the mountain, the slumbering titans rose. Their bodies were not flesh, nor were they metal. They were something else entirely, formed of stone, molten gold, and raw elemental power. The first to rise was Valdros, the titan of the earth, his form a living monolith, each movement causing the very mountains to shift. His voice, when it came, was the sound of grinding stone and cracking glaciers. The world is in peril. Beside him, Ares, the storm caller, took form, her body swirling with tempestuous winds and arcs of living lightning. These are no mere invaders. They are something unnatural. The third to awaken was Ignis, the Inferno, wreathed in eternal fire, his form shifting between molten fury and solid obsidian. He said nothing. He merely watched as the gods convened. Above them, Eldoria's skies darkened. The heavens themselves trembled in anticipation. The gods were awake, and war was coming. The battle for Eldoria. The first wave of mechs reached the outer walls of Eldoria. They marched in perfect formation, their crimson plating gleaming under the storm-choked sky. Behind them, war machines rolled forward, massive siege mechs, walking artillery platforms, and aerial drones hovering in flawless synchronization. From atop the walls, Eldoria's defenders braced for battle. Ballistae loaded with enchanted quarrels. Wizards chanted spells, their staffs glowing with raw mana. Knights clad in divine armor knelt in prayer, invoking the blessings of the gods. And then, the mountain roared. A shockwave erupted from the peaks, sending tremors across the battlefield. The mechs faltered, their stabilizers struggling to compensate. Sensors scrambled. And then Valdros emerged. 50 stories tall, his form composed of living stone, he strode forward, each step a miniature earthquake. The first rank of mechs opened fire, plasma rounds, railgun bursts, incendiary shells. None of it mattered. Valdros raised his hand, and the earth rose in response. The battlefield broke apart, jagged spikes of obsidian erupting beneath the invaders, skewering mechs by the dozens. Then the sky itself retaliated. Ares descended, her form an endless storm, and from her outstretched hands, lightning fell like a divine judgment. Dozens of aerial drones exploded in bursts of fire and twisted metal. The very winds turned against the machines, throwing them into one another like playthings. Then came Ignis. He did not attack from afar. He fell from the heavens, a comet of pure flame, and when he struck the battlefield, a shockwave of heat incinerated an entire division of mechs in an instant. The machine army, flawless, logical, unstoppable, had met something it could not calculate. It had met the wrath of gods. Lord Vortha's realization. From the command bridge, Lord Vortha watched in silence. His war machines, his perfect, precise legions, were being torn apart. By stone. By wind. By fire. By beings that defied every law of physics and logic. His fingers tightened on the armrest. For the first time in his conquest he felt uncertainty. These entities, he murmured, eyes locked on the devastation below. They are not like the rest. Calculin 7's voice crackled. Commander, if I may suggest. No, Vortha stood, his mechanical frame towering over his subordinates. His optics glowed brighter and his voice was iron and fury. This is no defeat. He turned sharply. Deploy Legion Omega. Ready the Titan-class warforms. Calculin 7 hesitated. But the energy readings? Vortha snarled. I do not fear gods. A new wave of mechs descended from the Warbringer. These were not mere infantry. These were warforms, built for planetary annihilation. And at the heart of them all, Vortha himself descended to the battlefield. The gods may have awakened, but he was the Mecha Warlord. And he would teach them the meaning of war. The battlefield burned. The air crackled with raw energy as firestorms and lightning strikes ravaged the Mecha legions, tearing through formations like a divine retribution made manifest. The ground itself fought back, jagged spears of obsidian impaling entire battalions. And above it all, three colossal figures stood against the endless march of steel: Valdros, the titan of the earth, Ares, the stormcaller, and Ignis, the inferno. They were gods, ancient and furious. But Lord Vortha's was something far more terrifying. He was a conqueror. And he had come prepared. The warforms entered the fray. A deafening boom split the heavens as Legion Omega deployed, descending from orbit in streaks of fire. Titan-class warforms, the pinnacle of mecha warfare, towering mechanical behemoths engineered for planetary conquest, slammed into the ground, their massive limbs sending shockwaves across the battlefield. Each one was a walking fortress, bristling with rail cannons, plasma lances, and graviton disruptors. At the center of them all stood Vortha himself, now clad in his Omega warform, a 50-meter colossus of black and crimson alloy, its core reactor glowing like a captive star. The gods had their power. He had technology. And technology had never lost to myth. God versus machine. Valdros, the titan of earth, moved first. He raised a mountainous fist, slamming it down with the force of 1,000 earthquakes. The ground erupted, a tidal wave of rock and molten gold surging toward the mechs. But Vortha had seen it coming. Redirect power to seismic dampeners. The Warbringer's orbital systems fired a gravitational pulse, dispersing the energy before it could shatter his army. The incoming wave of destruction collapsed mid-air, its force nullified. And then the counterattack began. Fire at will. The warforms unleashed hell. Hyper-accelerated rail slugs punched through Valdros' stone flesh, antimatter warheads detonated against Ares' storm body, and thermal lances carved through Ignis' molten frame. The very air boiled with energy, and for the first time in millennia, the gods screamed. Ares unleashes the sky's wrath. Ares vanished, dissolving into pure storm. The sky darkened, and seconds later, lightning struck. Not a single bolt. Not 100. Thousands. Every warform was hit simultaneously. Circuitry burned, hulls cracked, energy shields flickered dangerously low. The battlefield became an inferno of light, and within it, Ares descended once more, her entire form a living tempest. Metal shall rust. Circuits shall fry. You do not belong here. She swiped a hand, and hurricane-force winds tore across the battlefield, ripping mechs apart and scattering even the Titan-class warforms. Then she saw him. Vortha. She raised a hand, summoning a spear of pure lightning, ready to obliterate him. And that was when Vortha moved. His warform vanished in a blink, an impossible burst of quantum displacement, reappearing behind Ares before she could react. His arm transformed, shifting into a particle disruptor cannon, and before she could turn, he fired. The sky screamed. Ares was hit directly, her entire form fracturing, arcs of lightning veering wildly out of control. She tried to reform, but Vorthos pressed the attack, punching his massive metallic fist into the core of the storm. And then, with one final blast, Ares shattered into 1,000 dying sparks. Valdros falls. Valdros roared in fury, his mountainous form charging toward Vorthos. The ground buckled, entire valleys forming beneath the weight of his charge. He raised both fists, but Vorthos had already anticipated it. Deploy graviton anchors. From orbit, the Warbringer fired, massive gravitational clamps locking onto Valdros, freezing him in place. The Titan of Earth could not move. And then the Mech swarmed him. Legion Omega's warforms tore into him, plasma saws and hypercharged particle beams carving deep into his stone flesh. Valdros struggled, but it was useless. You do not belong in this age, old god. Vorthos raised his Omega warform's colossal sword, a planetary siege blade designed to split capital ships in half, and with a single devastating strike he severed Valdros' head from his shoulders. The earth moaned, mountains collapsed, and with one final tremor, Valdros fell. The Inferno's last stand. That left Ignis. He stood alone amidst the wreckage of his fallen brethren, the battlefield a ruined wasteland. His flames dimmed, but his eyes burned with rage. You may wield power. You may wield steel. His voice rumbled, ancient and unyielding. But you do not understand war. Vorthos cocked his head. I've conquered 100 worlds. Ignis smiled. Then you should know the cost of underestimating your enemy. And with that, Ignis did not attack Vorthos. He attacked the Warbringer. With his last breath, he hurled himself into the sky, a living comet, his molten form burning hotter than a star, heading straight for the orbital dreadnought. The Warbringer's defensive systems activated, but it was too late. Ignis hit the ship, and the sky erupted. The fall of the Warbringer. From the ground, Vorthos watched in horror as his flagship, the indomitable Warbringer, the heart of his invasion, was consumed in a fiery explosion. Millions of tons of steel shattered. Weapons, data, war machines, gone. The gods had lost. But so had he. As the burning wreckage of his once great warship rained down upon the ruined battlefield, Vorthos stood silent, his warform's optics glowing dimly. For the first time in his entire reign he felt it. Not rage. Not determination. Not defiance. Doubt. The aftermath. The gods were dead. But the battle had not been a victory. Vorthos had lost the Warbringer. His primary invasion force was in ruins. His Titan-class warforms, crippled. And Eldoria still stood. As he stared across the battlefield at the shattered remains of gods and mechs alike, a voice crackled in his comms. Calculin 7. Commander, what are your orders? Vorthos did not answer immediately. For the first time he wondered, had he truly won? Or had he awakened something far worse? The sky burned. The wreckage of the Warbringer, his once indomitable flagship, rained down in flames, scattered like the bones of a slain god. The battlefield was a graveyard of titans, mechs and deities alike reduced to shattered remains. The gods were dead. And yet Eldoria still stood. Lord Vorthos, the Mecha Warlord, stood amid the devastation, his Omega warform towering over the ruins. His core reactor pulsed with energy, but for the first time he felt the unfamiliar weight of uncertainty pressing against his mind. His greatest conquest had cost him everything. A kingdom in ruins. The surviving Mecha forces regrouped, their once pristine formations broken and battered. The Titan-class warforms, once unstoppable machines of war, stood limping, their armor cracked and scorched. Hundreds of thousands of units lay destroyed. And then there was the Warbringer, his fortress among the stars, gone. Vorthos clenched his massive mechanical fist. He had waged war against gods and won. But now he stood upon a world that was ruined beyond use. His invasion force was crippled. His war machine had been gutted. And the very planet he sought to rule had become an uninhabitable wasteland of fire and shattered earth. For the first time in his iron reign he questioned himself. What had he actually gained? The silence before the storm. Commander, the voice of Calculin 7, his tactical AI, crackled over his comms. Our fleet is crippled. The orbital command station is destroyed. Remaining forces are at 22% capacity. Awaiting orders. Vorthos did not respond immediately. His optics scanned the ruined landscape. There were no more enemies. No more gods. Only the emptiness of a hollow victory. Then the ground shook, not from an attack, but from something else. A sound, low, ancient, and deep, rumbled through the planet itself. Something was waking up. The final guardian. At the heart of the battlefield, the ruins of Eldoria's great temple split open, and from its depths, something colossal emerged. A shadow against the flames. Larger than the Titan-class warforms. Larger than the gods themselves. Its body was stone and metal fused into one, veins of molten fire coursing through its form. Its eyes ignited like dying stars, and when it spoke, the air itself trembled. You have slain the gods. The voice was not angered. It was not vengeful. It was witnessing. And now you will face that which comes after. The final guardian of Eldoria had awakened. And Vorthas knew, this was not a god. This was something older. Something stronger. Something that had never been meant to awaken. And now it was looking directly at him. The last stand. All units, defensive formation. Vorthas bellowed. The remaining mecha forces scrambled, Titan-class warforms raising their rail cannons and particle lances, but even in his Omega warform, Vorthas felt it. They were outmatched. The final guardian of Eldoria moved, faster than something its size should have been able to. Its hand, a mountain of raw energy, swung forward. An entire division of warforms was erased in an instant. Plasma shields flickered and died. And then the guardian raised its other hand. A planetary-scale gravitational field erupted, pulling everything toward it. Mechs were ripped from the ground, entire plateaus collapsed, and Vorthas' own warform servos screamed as he tried to resist. For the first time in his reign he was being pulled against his will. Fire everything. The sky lit up as the remaining mechs fired all at once. Plasma cannons, rail slugs, graviton disruptors. The atmosphere screamed with the sheer force of destruction. And yet, the guardian did not fall. It absorbed the attack. And then it spoke once more. You have taken from this world. The molten glow in its body intensified. Now this world will take from you. The sky shattered. The Mecha Warlord's choice. Vorthas saw it then. The guardian wasn't fighting. It was erasing everything. Not just his forces. Not just his conquest. But the entire battlefield. Eldoria itself was collapsing. The world was rejecting him. If he stayed, he would die. If he retreated, he would lose everything. Calculin 7's voice came through again, strained. Commander, evacuation protocols recommended. We cannot win this. Vorthas clenched his fists. The gods had fallen. The world was broken. His empire was crippled. And yet, if he left, he would be nothing more than a failed conqueror. A warrior without a victory. But he knew the truth. This wasn't a battle anymore. It was annihilation. Vorthas exhaled sharply. His Omega Warform's reactor surged and he made his choice. Order the retreat. Full disengagement. No. The end of a conquest. The skies ignited as the remaining mechs abandoned the battlefield, activating emergency jump drives. Vorthas was the last to leave, standing atop a ruined plateau as the Guardian loomed over him, its burning eyes watching. You will not return. The words were not a threat. They were a promise. And as Vorthas activated his final warp sequence, the last thing he saw was Eldoria crumbling, the world collapsing under the weight of its own wrath. The conquest was over. And for the first time Vorthas had lost. Epilogue. A new war begins. Aboard the last citadel, his new flagship, Vorthas sat in silence. The remains of his empire were scattered, his forces devastated. But something gnawed at him. Not anger. Not defeat. But understanding. Magic was not weak. It was not something that could be crushed under steel and circuitry. It was something older. Something that had endured longer than war itself. And if he ever wanted to rule such a world, he would need to become more than just a warlord. He would need to become something new. Something beyond Mecha. Beyond technology. And as the last remnants of Eldoria burned in his mind, a single thought remained. This war was not over. It had only just begun. Fire, did the Mecha Warlord truly lose? Or has he just learned how to fight his next war? Rocket, subscribe for more epic sci-fi battles.